Welcome to this overview video for the Conservation by Design Situation Analysis module. I'm Audrey Exomis and I'm part of the Conservation by Design team. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to this module, presenting on behalf of the full team that was involved in creating this. Conservation by Design is TNC's method for developing impactful and equitable strategies to achieve the 2030 goals. Since its launch in 1996, Conservation by Design has always been and continues to be focused on strategy development and improvement. At its core, strategy development is the process of deciding which actions your team should pursue to give you the greatest likelihood of achieving your goals given the context within which you're working. And then to test and actively manage those strategies as needed based on evidence. Within Conservation by Design, the purpose of the situation analysis module is to help a conservation team develop a shared understanding of the challenge or challenges they're trying to address and the key elements of that social ecological system that's both contributing to and being affected by the state of that challenge. By understanding the current situation and context, your team will be better equipped to design actions to achieve your objectives and drive impact towards TNC's 2030 goals. To put it another way, if a team selects strategies that are not informed by an understanding of the social ecological context around their challenge, they risk those strategies not being as effective as they should be and not resulting in the outcomes that they hope to achieve. So time spent in mapping the particular context of the system is time well spent to gain group alignment and to ensure that the team is not missing key opportunities to affect positive change in the system. How will this module help my team? So conducting the situation analysis module can help your team develop more robust conservation strategies through having a better collective understanding of the key factors causing the challenge and the immediate and longer term consequences of that challenge. So armed with this broader contextual understanding of the system within which your challenge sits, your team will be better equipped to then identify potential opportunities where an intervention in the system might lead to positive change. Those potential intervention points within the system form the foundation of a later conversation on selecting a strategy for your work. I'd like to share a quote from the California Urban team, which we had the pleasure of working with. So they said, working with the Conservation by Design team on the situation analysis was an excellent experience. We completed the sessions with a better understanding of our work and our goals and clear next steps for continuing to move forward with our planning process. Now we'll talk about outputs of the module. First, you can expect to leave the module with a description of the current situation, that social ecological context around your primary interest, including key factors causing the situation and immediately resulting from it. Just a note here that a team will have varying levels of granularity depending on where they start and how much information they're bringing into the process. Secondly, you should expect to have a shared understanding amongst the team of the relevant context. And we can't stress how important that is to make sure that the team is aligned moving forward. Third, you can expect to have a list of key insights and potential intervention points in the system where if action were to be taken, it might result in positive change in your primary interest or the challenge you're trying to solve. And lastly, you'll likely leave with a plan for filling different things that come up during the workshop, including knowledge gaps, maybe incorporating any new perspectives, and also improving the diagram over time. So again, Conservation by Design is about helping teams with strategy development and improvement. To help with this, the updated Conservation by Design is structured as a set of 9 modules. Each module addresses a specific step or aspect of planning to help teams develop impactful and equitable strategies. The situation analysis module falls in the middle of what might be the typical order of planning steps. And while the module can be done on its own, a conservation team is well positioned to undertake this module when they've completed some steps upstream. So including, first of all, alignment on scope of the challenge they'd like to address, which can be achieved via the planning scope module, an understanding of interested parties in this context and a plan for how to engage those parties, which can be achieved via the interested parties module, and finally, clear conservation objectives within which that scope that they will focus their efforts on sits, so that it can be completed via the defining objectives module. In addition, outputs from the situation analysis module can then be brought directly into modules a little further to the right. So specifically, the strategy selection module, so the short list of potential intervention points within that system where a team might take action to effect positive change in the system, can be a direct input into the strategy selection module. From there, a team could develop a theory of change, which they're essentially articulating their path from action to outcome, and then undertake the MEL module, where they can develop a learning agenda questions and a simple MEL plan to monitor whether their work they're doing in the short term is having the impact that they would expect. In addition to what I've outlined on the previous slide, a team should consider conducting a situation analysis module during initial development of a new strategy, so prior to creating a theory of change. And for existing work, the module and the team situation analysis diagram also can and should be revisited at any time during the strategy's implementation, but especially if there are any major changes in that social ecological context within which their work sits, or if they've generated evidence to demonstrate that the strategy is not playing out as they expected. Another way to think about this is if your team needs to answer one or more of the following questions, this is maybe a good module for you. So how do we ensure that our team has a common understanding of the context and challenges connected to our work? How can we incorporate diverse perspectives in building a greater understanding of that context? Does our team understand the range of key threats causing the challenge, as well as key consequences resulting from that challenge? And finally, how do we identify potential intervention points in the system where actions can be targeted to have positive impact? And I know I've been throwing around a few terms throughout this presentation, so I'll go ahead and spend some time defining each one of them. So first of all, a primary interest is the central issue or issues that bring the team together. It's the key social ecological challenge the team and the relevant interested parties are interested in addressing, and just a note that it should align with our 2030 goals. For direct threat, we're defining that as the immediate cause or causes of your primary interest, often symptoms of an underlying problem. Immediate consequences are what immediately results from that state of your primary interest. And an intervention point are opportunities within the situation analysis diagram where if an intervention were to take place, it could result in a positive impact on your primary interest. So to bring this to light a little bit, I'll provide an example. So a primary interest might be fragmentation and degradation of montane forest leading to biodiversity loss. Within that system, direct threats might be forest loss and fragmentation, degradation of remaining forest, and overharvesting of native species that are all contributing to that state of that primary interest, the fragmentation and degradation. Immediate consequences might be reduced water security for downstream communities and loss of revenue from tourism. And in this system, a likely intervention point might be addressing insufficient resources for local protected area authorities, again, which is found to be a driving force behind forest loss and fragmentation. I think it's important to pause here and make sure that I've set accurate expectations about what this module is intended to do versus what it's not intended to do. So first of all, you will leave this module with an initial sketch of your challenge, that social ecological context around the primary interest. You shouldn't expect, though, to have a really detailed diagram that will encompass all aspects of those direct threats and the immediate consequences of the primary interest in a great amount of detail. Secondly, you should expect to leave with a key list of insights and potential intervention points within the system, where again, if action were to be taken, it might result in positive change. However, you wouldn't have a finalized list of strategies that the team's then going to pursue to make that change in the primary interest. That will be handled in strategy selection. We also won't spend time talking through scope. That's handled in a planning scope conversation, or dig deep on solutions to your problem. And we also won't be having time to examine evidence for assumptions being made. All of those will happen outside of the module itself. Now I'll talk through the main steps of the module. So the module is designed in 4 steps, typically across 3 3-hour sessions for a total of 9 hours. And each step really builds upon the next. We've developed this module to be conducted either in a virtual setting using a virtual whiteboard or also in an in-person setting. And we've kind of provided suggestions about how to adapt to either setting in our facilitator's guide. And just a note here that in addition to the workshop sessions themselves, the facilitator should also be prepared to put some work into conducting a scoping call ahead of time with the interested team, generally a strategy lead and perhaps a few other members of that team, and also spend some time familiarizing themselves with the mural board with the facilitator's guide as well. Step 1 is really about agreeing on a primary interest. So it involves asking participants to first identify elements of that primary interest or the challenge they're hoping to focus on. And this is also somewhere where the facilitator would likely have conversations ahead of time with a strategy lead to kind of get a sense of where they're sitting with those, thinking about the scope and with the challenge that they want to focus on. Step 2 is really where we begin to identify the major threats causing the state of the primary interest, and then also the immediate consequences resulting from that primary interest. These will form the major branches of the diagram. And then from there, we have the team actually build out the diagram, and we've used a turn-taking model to do so. We've decided to do this because it allows participants an opportunity to contribute equally to the diagram, so not just a few people in the room are actually the ones generating the content, but it's being generated equally by members of the group. It really fosters dialogue and kind of understanding amongst the different people in the group, and it's also, we hope, a little bit fun as well. From here, we ask them, the team, to return back to the diagram to consider other perspectives not fully represented in the diagram to that point. So this exercise is really aimed to illuminate for the team what gaps might exist in terms of perspectives on the diagram and really help them see the value in having those perspectives. The facilitator will then help them kind of think through next steps to more fully engage with that perspective outside of the workshop. Step 4 finally is about considering the situation as a whole and identifying key places within that diagram where if an action or an intervention were to take place, that might result in a positive change in the challenge, which we're calling the primary interest. There's then a discussion on which intervention points were identified by each individual, and then hopefully resulting in a list of a short list of prioritized potential intervention points or levers that they can take into more detailed conversations into the strategy selection module as well. Finally, if you're interested in learning more about this module, either because perhaps you have a team that might be interested in a workshop or you yourself are interested in being trained as a facilitator, first of all, please check out our website, conservationbydesign.org. It's a great website, has a bunch of videos. We also have a page for each of the modules, and on the situation analysis page, there's a ton of resources for either audience, if you're just interested in learning more, if you want to become a facilitator. If you're wanting to become a facilitator, we also do have self-paced facilitator training available on conservationtraining.org. Finally, please do visit us at our Conservation by Design office hours with any questions you have, and feel free to reach out to our team with any additional questions you might have. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, for being interested in Conservation by Design and in the situation analysis module, and feel free to email me with any additional questions that you might have. Thank you so much.